Welcome back, my friends. As you can tell by the title, it is time to continue the work on a tiny houseboat. It has been a couple months since the last part, and I'm going to spare you the details, but life has been a little bit challenging recently. And besides that, it is really hard to get anything done here in the garage during the really cold winter months. And that's because it's so hard to keep a consistent temperature in here, especially when it drops down to -30 overnight. And that is really a problem for most epoxies, glues, paints and varnishes, especially when they take longer than just a couple hours to cure. Anyways, in the last part, I finalized the poor man's fiberglass job, and to do that job in the first place, I had to remove all the temporary plastic around the window openings. I didn't think it would be that big of a deal to just leave it open for a while after doing the poor man's fiberglass. And boy, was I wrong. A couple of months was all it took to cover everything in a thick, nasty layer of dust. So before I can do anything on the boat, I will have to do a quick cleanup job first. Alright, so it's finally time to install windows, which should end the dust problem once and for all. I have two old RV windows that I would like to install. I bought them years ago on Facebook Marketplace. The problem is my wall thickness of 2 3/4 of an inch is thicker than what the frame and the trim of those windows are made for. That means I have to make a spacer for this to make it work. And for that I'm using old tongue and groove cedar boards recycled from an old sauna. To get a good seal around the window, I use butyl tape on the window frame and weather stripping on both sides of the spacer. Now, even though cedar is pretty rot resistant, I still used 3 coats of water-based polyurethane on it off camera just to waterproof it. Now, in order to pull the whole sandwich together, I had to pre-drill through the spacer before installing the screws. So that worked pretty good for the most part, except some of the screws couldn't get a good enough hold of the window frame and they stripped. That forced me to use some roofing screws from the exterior to apply enough pressure to the butyl tape. Ideally, you would like to see it squeeze out a little bit on the edges, that way you know you have a good seal going on. Now, using roofing screws from the outside like that really adds a lot of potential for leaks in the future. Luckily, it's not that big of a deal in my case because this entire window sits under an overhanging roof. But I really hope I don't have to do this for the second window. In addition to the spacer, I had to make a trim piece to cover the corners of the square opening on the interior of the second window. This is actually quite a big window. It's over 5 feet wide and 2.5 feet tall, and half of it can be opened, which is really nice, especially when you try to cook something on the countertop. It will help to ventilate the space. This time I used a bunch of clamps to pull the window against the boat, and then I let it sit for a couple hours. After 3 hours, the butyl tape had enough time to set, and this is exactly what I wanted to see, just a little bit of squeeze out on the edges. That can be easily removed with a putty knife. Okay, so that part was somewhat easy. I don't have any RV windows anymore for the other 4 openings, but I do have 1/4-inch tempered glass panels that I bought years ago from a local glass shop for a really good deal. And back then I framed the opening already according to their size. Now for the 2 smaller windows in the front, I hope I can recycle some old plexiglass panels that I have kicking around. There's no doubt about it that a proper RV window is a far better choice. I got really lucky with this one because I found it for very little money used online, but it's very unlikely that you will find enough windows in the right size for all of your openings. Now of course you could just go ahead and custom order all of them, but that costs literally thousands of dollars, money that I don't have, so I'll have to find a way to work with the glass panels that are already available to me. This is going to be the method I will use to install the panels. This cross-section of the wall shows the framing, the interior paneling, the insulation, and the exterior paneling. As you can see, I let the exterior paneling stick out by 1 inch. That will not only allow me to use the opening itself as part of the window frame, but it also makes it a lot easier to maintain the nice look of rounded corners. To help prevent water damage in case of a leak, the marked section has been soaked in epoxy. The exterior paneling has been waterproofed with PMF. I will use 2 lines of 3/8 double-sided waterproof glazing tape to install the glass panels. I could use just 1 line of a wider tape, but as wider as it is harder it will be to install it in the curved corners. 1/8 of an inch spacing all the way around between the paneling and the framing will give the framework some room to expand and contract without damaging the panel itself. Now cedar trim from the interior will receive 1 line of weather stripping. Screws that will go through that trim frame will apply clamping pressure on the glass panel, which is at that point sandwiched just between foam. Now theoretically, this should be already a waterproof seal, but just to be sure, I will use a high quality sealant to provide additional waterproofing. Alright, now let's get to work. So the sealant I'm going to use is Sikaflex 221. I've used this once before. It does an excellent job as a sealant, but man, it is such a mess to work with. You really have to be careful that you don't get this on your hands and your surfaces. It's super hard to clean up. You can use mineral spirits. I have really good experience with xylene. So yeah, that's definitely something to be aware of. Now I will need a fairly thick bead, so I'm gonna cut off like half an inch here and then get to work. Like I said, it's very tricky to apply. It is super thick and stringy like hot glue, so I definitely recommend to use masking tape for a cleaner application. Now if something ends up on the glass panel itself, it's not that big of a deal because paper towel and solvent will make it somewhat easy to clean up. I recommend to use flexible caulking tools like this. It just helps to maintain a consistent bead. Also, this stuff gives off quite the chemical smell, so it's probably best to do this in a well-ventilated area. I let this cure for a couple days and this is the result. It actually looks pretty nice and clean. Feels like rubber right now. So this will provide a pretty permanent and consistent seal all the way around. I want to be able to black out all windows, and once those clips are screwed to the wall, the installation couldn't be easier. It takes literally only a minute to clip all the window blinds in place. So as you can see, the shades work great. They block out all the light. There's only one thing that I'm afraid of, is when the boat is in the water, there always will be a little bit of movement, and I'm afraid this bar here will start swinging and cause this super annoying clicking noise. So I think I will have to come up with some sort of hook down here so I can hook in this little handle, and that will keep the mechanism of the shade under tension and hopefully stops all the movement and therefore also all the noise. I just cut a scrap aluminum pipe into those short sleeves, and then I used CA glue to attach a washer off center. After giving this a coat of spray paint, I used a 2-inch screw to install them. There was one more thing left to wrap up the window job. Instead of letting the water run from the roof over the walls and the windows, I would like to channel it towards the stern, where it can just drop off the overhanging roof. The boat will be a little bit heavier at the stern because that's where the water tank, the fuel and the motor will be located, so it most likely will tip in that direction already. As a channel, I'm using this flexible trim lock rain gutter. It comes with a super strong 3M backing tape, and once it's placed it cannot be moved anymore. That's why I used a chalk line to give me as straight of a line as possible. Here you actually can see how the chalk line slightly tapers down towards the stern. That should be enough to move the water. I also used a channel at the back. Alright, so that's it for today. I'm always shocked at the end of each video how all the work looks like a day's worth of effort, but in reality with the filming and editing, I'm actually looking at weeks of work. I guess it's just something to always keep in mind while watching. Anyways, there's still endless of work to do on the boat, so I won't run out of video ideas anytime soon. Thank you for your patience and for staying tuned, and I will see you on the next one.